So I'm coming at y'all tonight as real as it gets. I'm crying. I'm going back and forth with God, and I'm really just struggling right now. I feel like God's called me to do something that I'm just quite frankly not the most qualified person to do. But then I'm like, but God doesn't call the qualified, does He? You can read the entire Bible and see that that's just how He is, and He does. He calls the unqualified because that's where He can really show His glory, is through the willing. And I do have a willing heart, but I'm struggling and I'm terrified. So something that I've kind of kept private for a little bit is I was sexually assaulted, and at the time I hadn't told anybody about it. So I had a friend that was helping me go through that time, and he recommended that I write about it. I was like, you know what, that's perfect. And at the time I was writing poetry real time, and I was like, you know what, I'll just write my story, because I was nervous. I was actually thinking I was not going to tell anybody about it, much less my parents, friends, family. Nobody was going to know about it. And I sat down and just wrote the entire story, thinking that, I'm the only person that's ever going to read this thing, and it's for me. It was never with the intention that this was ever going to go public. I mean, I'm a horrible writer. I'm a horrible speaker. I was like, this is not going to go anywhere. But that same friend was like, well, you know what? If you published it, it could reach people. I was like, yeah, you're right. And that was after the fact that I had written it. But at the time that I had finished it, there was no happy ending. And the happy ending is that I got a relationship with God. There kind of isn't a very happy ending to the case necessarily. It just fizzled out. But I mean, to me though, the happiest ending that could have happened was me legitimately falling on my knees saying, I remember that's when I went to Region for the first time. I went through that thinking, God, this is literally my last hope. This is all I've got left. It's literally you or nothing else. And through that process, I gained a true and loving relationship with God. And I was reading the Bible, learning what He was saying in His scriptures. I learned about Moses and his story about speaking, and finally I could write an ending to the story. But I was still nervous about publishing it, because I was like, I don't want people, if you don't know me, I'm super introverted, and I'm a very big behind the scenes person. I always have been. But I've always felt deep down that there was something about me that had leadership potential. And finally, with my husband's encouragement and lots of love along the way, I finally decided to publish it. So I put it out there, waited for quite a while, and I prayerfully signed a contract with a publisher, and I'm publishing my book. But that terrifies me, because I'm struggling with what God's called me to do. And God's called me to be open and vulnerable with people. And I'm like, that's not me. By all means, that is not who I am. But, if not me, then who? I've got a story to share. And I know I'm not the only one that struggles with life and with, what God's called me to do, and with trials and tribulations and trauma. I know I'm not the only one that goes through that. And I'm beyond grateful that God is giving me a platform. However, that's terrifying to me. I'm not an eloquent speaker. To give you a great example of that, A time that I love is like anytime, you go to church and they open it up for testimonies, I am like almost always one of the first people to raise their hand. I get excited about bragging on my God. I absolutely love it because he amazes me all the time, and I almost always have something to share. But when I share, because I'm sharing it in front of at least 10 people, if not almost always more than that, I get so nervous that not only does my voice shake, but literally my whole body is shaking. Like my knees are knocking, my hand's shaking. I'm surprised that the mic is not about to fall out of my hand. It's bad. It's embarrassing. And I'm like, God, I feel like Moses, and I love my tattoo because it reminds me constantly of this verse, Exodus 4:13, where Moses is, at this point, he's going back and forth with God about how, God, I'm not qualified. You really, no, this is why you shouldn't choose me, yada, yada, yada. Well, he finally gets to the point in Exodus 4, verse 13, where he finally just straight up tells God, you should just send somebody else. And I love that. I love that just blunt and honesty with God that Moses shared. He was like, you know what? Absolutely not. No, thank you. I'm good. But God still worked through Moses. It took a while, and it took a lot of prep, if you will. He had to introduce Aaron, and he worked through Aaron a little bit before he ever started working completely through Moses. But he eventually started working through Moses somewhere along through the plagues. And Moses eventually led his people out of Egypt. And that's huge to me, and that's such a huge encouragement. But I still come to you struggling with what God's called me to do, and the path that I'm taking, and I'm nervous and I'm scared and I'm petrified, and I know I'm not alone in that feeling. So I just come to you with encouragement, because I'm encouraged and uplifted by reaching out to people and praying and reading my Bible and just constantly being pointed back to a God that says, you can't. And that's absolutely correct. I cannot. I can't. But my God has shown me time and time again that he can. And that doesn't make it any less terrifying by no means. But I share this with you to say that, hey, if you're struggling with that, or if you're struggling with anything in life right now, just know you're not alone. This world will do everything in its power to tell you that you're alone and that you should isolate, you should not reach out. I mean, it's going to do everything in its power to discourage you. But my friend, let me tell you that that's simply not true. There are, I'm sure, and if there's not anybody that you can reach out to in your life, please, by all means, reach out to me. I'm more than happy to talk with you and to share in your burden. There's something that's so freeing about sharing your burden with others, and to just share your story and to just open up and allow somebody else to walk alongside you. There's something to be said for godly counsel, and there's something to be said about friendship and people walking alongside you during your tough times. And I'm beyond blessed that I have people that are willing to walk with me along this journey. So I just want to encourage you to reach out to somebody if you're struggling right now. Just know that you don't have to struggle alone. You're not alone in this world. My motto is, if I can do anything at all to make any one person feel a little less alone in the world, that's my thing. That's where my willingness comes in at. I'm like, you know what? That's what I want, because I grew up so alone in this world, and it stinks. It stinks thinking that you're alone and isolating. And I mean, in all honesty, if God was not to intervene in my life, I would have ended up in suicide. Like, I would have killed myself because of the loneliness and the isolation that this world has made me believe is my reality, but that's not. Let me encourage you, my friend, to reach out to someone and say, hey, I'm struggling, or hey, I need you. It's difficult. I'm not going to lie. It's terrifying. This world's going to make you think that, other people are not struggling, and we see everybody's highlight reel on the internet. But let me tell you, everybody's going through something, whether they post it or not. And more often than not, people aren't going to post it. I can't believe I'm posting this right now. But I just want to encourage and uplift others and share that, hey, this is what I'm struggling with right now. I'm struggling with being open and honest and vulnerable with people. But that's something that I also love to do at the same time. It's a very conflicting thought, but my God is working through me, and He's showing me daily, even though I get discouraged. Like today, I shared part of my story today at church at a partnership dinner, and I embarrassingly fumbled, and I embarrassingly shook, and my voice shook, and it was just not good. Nobody probably got anything out of it, although I'm sure that's probably not true. I like to beat myself up more often than I like to give myself encouragement. This is why you need to reach out to people, because at least for me, I'm going to beat myself up. I'm going to need to reach out to others to encourage and uplift me, because I'm not going to give myself the grace and the credit where God really just works. But even through my shaky voice, I'm sure God was still working, and God still used me. I very easily could have sat there and said, no, God, I'm not going to speak, and no, God, I'm not going to share. But the willingness in my heart to make at least one person feel a little less alone in the world is what keeps me going. So I pray that, if God's calling you to something and God wants to use you, that you can say yes to that calling, even if it's saying yes moment by moment, day by day, which is exactly what I'm currently doing. Just know that you're not alone in that. I can't imagine what some people that are called to do anything. We're all called to do something. And, I was called at the age of 16, and I pulled a Jonah and freaked out and swam the other direction, if you will, for quite a while. And God finally wrangled me back in and said, come back home. It's okay. And He welcomed me with open arms, even though I went a little AWOL for a little while. But my God still loves me, and my God somehow in some way still wants to use me. And I want to encourage you that your story is quite similar. God wants to use you too. God wants to use everybody for His glory. He really does. So I just pray that if you're struggling, and hey, if you have nobody to reach out to, please feel free to reach out to me. Listen, I'm going to be the first person to let you know I don't have it all together, but I do know my God, and I know that my God is great, and that He is way greater than I could ever imagine and hope. And He gives me hope and encouragement through His Word, and I'd love to point you to Him and to help guide you along your way, God willing, of course. God willing to use me is what I mean. So it's my encouragement that this can help someone and help someone to feel a little less alone in the world. I love y'all. Bye.